that we are going to talk about the third conditional, right? So the third conditional, when we talk about the third conditional, we talk about imagined situations in the past and their imagined results, okay? Remember that in English, we have four kinds of conditional. We have the zero conditional sentences. We use the zero conditional when we talk about something that is true, okay? Something that is generally true, okay? For example, if you stand in the rain, you get wet, okay? So this is something true. Then we have the first conditional. We use the first conditional to talk about possible future situations. For example, if it rains, we will cancel the trip, okay? So this is a possible situation in the future. We use the second conditional to talk about imaginary situations, but in the present and in the future. For example, if I won the lottery, I would travel a lot. So this is something imaginary, right? Something hypothetical, it's unreal. And we use the third conditional to talk about imaginary situations too, but in the past. Okay, so the person is imagining a different past. Okay, imaginary situations that didn't happen in the past. Okay, for example, if you had studied, you would have passed the exam. Si hubieses estudiado, si hubieras estudiado, habrías pasado el examen. Okay, so this is something that we are imagining about the past. Okay, if I hadn't been sick, I would have gone to your party. Si no hubiese estado enfermo, hubiese ido a tu fiesta. Okay, so this is the third conditional, and today we are going to talk about this one. Okay, so I want you to pay attention. Okay, so for example, here we have, it wasn't a nice day. We didn't have a good time. Okay, I want you to tell me, how can we change this situation? So we are going to imagine that this situation is different in the past. Okay, so we can say, if it had been a nice day, we would have had a good time. Ok, entonces estamos imaginándonos que en el pasado esto fue diferente. Ok, por ejemplo, dice, it wasn't a nice day, we didn't have a good time. As you can see, all this is in the past. It's something that happened in the past. But I wish it could be different. Ok, yo desearía que hubiese sido diferente. For example, yo puedo decir, if it had been a nice day, we would have had a good time. Okay. Then we have this one. It was a nice day and we had a good time. ¿Cómo podríamos decir la misma oración utilizando esta misma estructura, pero diciendo esto, algo diferente, lo opuesto? ¿Cómo podríamos decirlo?
Maybe if it hadn't been a nice day, we wouldn't have had a good time.
Okay, very good. If it hadn't been a nice day, we wouldn't or couldn't, because we can use couldn't or wouldn't, have had a good time. Okay? As you can see, this sentence has two parts. Okay? And this sentence is divided by a comma. This is the first clause. And this is the second clause. Okay? What tense do we have in the first clause? What is this tense that you can see here in the sentence? What is this tense?
The condition?
Okay, yes. In conditional sentences, we always have a condition and a result, right? For example, in this sentence, this is the condition until the comma, and this is the result. Okay, so what is the tense? ¿Cuál es el tiempo gramatical? What is the tense that we use in the condition here? What is the tense here?
Past perfect.
Past perfect, right? As you can see, we have past perfect, had been. Remember that we form the past perfect with the auxiliary verb have, but in the past, had, and the verb in the past participle. And here we have the past perfect, but in the negative form, right? Hadn't been. So in the condition, we use the past perfect, okay? What about in the result? What is this? What do we use in the result? What tense can you see here? What do you think? What is this? Any ideas?
Past participle.
Will
Okay.
have.
This is the past. Yeah, okay. This is the past participle, but all these tense is called the perfect conditional. Okay? How do we form the perfect conditional? We can form the perfect conditional with would, with could, have, and the past participle of the verb, as you can see here. Would, have, and the past participle of the verb. Could, have, and the past participle of the verb. Okay, so this is the way, this is the structure that you need to learn to use the third conditional sentence. Okay, remember, we have a condition that is the if clause, se llama la if clause porque empieza con if, okay, y utilizamos el past perfect, had plus the verb in the past participle. And in the second part of the sentence, we use the perfect conditional, would or could, have, and the past participle, okay? As you can see, we have a comma, okay? We divide the sentence by a comma, okay? It is divided by a comma. When we write the if clause at the end, we don't need to use a comma. I'm going to show you the example. We would have had a good time if it hadn't been a nice day. As you can see, I am changing the position. Okay, I am using the first clause at the end and the second clause at the beginning. When we change the position and we use the if clause at the end, we don't need a comma. Okay, but when we write the if clause at the beginning of the sentence, we need a comma. Okay, be careful with the comma. Any questions about this third conditional sentence? We sometimes use these conditional sentences to say regrets too. Okay, for example, I didn't study for my exam and I had bad grades. Okay, I didn't study and I had bad grades, or I got bad grades. So I can say, if I had studied for my exam, I would have gotten good grades. También para expresar algo que nos arrepentimos. If I have studied more for my exam, I would have gotten good grades. Si hubiera estudiado, hubiera obtenido mejores calificaciones, ¿cierto? Entonces, también podemos utilizarlo para expresar regrets. Okay, so we are going to go back to the book. I want you to go to the grammar panel so we can fill this, okay? It says, imaginary situations in the past. Would have, it says. We use would have plus, do you remember what do we use after would have?
Past participle.
Past participle, right? To talk about imaginary or real situations in the past. Imaginary situations in the past, right? For example, my grandfather would have approved of the advances in digital photography. So this is an imaginary situation. Ella se está imaginando que su abuelo aprobaría o le gustaría estos avances que hay en la fotografía, right? The writer imagines her grandfather's reaction and uses would have to show this, okay? Here we have the chart of the structure. I want you to help me to complete this, okay? Contracted forms, it says. This is the affirmative sentence and this is the negative sentence, okay? So, for example, number one, he, what can we say for the contracted form? What do you think? ¿Cuál es la forma contraída de would?
D.
The D, right? So we can say he would have approved. He'd have approved, right? What about this one, the negative form? He wouldn't, right? He wouldn't have approved. This is the negative, right? Then we have here the questions, the question form. How do you think we can start the question here? How can we start the question? Would he have approved? Okay, would he have approved? And then we have the yes, no answers. Yes, he would. He would. Yes, he would. Or no, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. Right? Okay. Then here we have the if part. Okay, la parte de if. If plus the past perfect. We use if plus the past perfect to describe an imaginary situation in the past. Complete the examples using the contraction of would, sorry, the contraction of had, or hadn't. Okay, for example, number one, it says, if my grandfather had, right? If my grandfather had been alive, if he, what can we say here? The contraction, right? If he'd lived longer, sorry, if he'd lived longer, and the negative form. If he hadn't died, right? So sometimes you will see the D like this, as a contraction, okay? ¿Cómo hacemos para no confundirnos con would? ¿Cómo creen que podemos hacer para no confundirnos con would y pensar de que es had? ¿Cuál sería la diferencia? ¿Cuál podría ser?
Word
Por el
after
if.
Ok, también por el if. Any other ideas?
The tense, teacher.
The tense, the verb, right? The verb that follows would is always in the base form. The verb that follows had is always in the past participle form. Okay, so be careful with that. Any questions about this, the third conditional? Okay, let's practice a little bit this on page 151, okay? Go to the page 151. It says imaginary situations in the past. Exercise 12.1. Choose the correct forms to complete the text, it says. Okay, number one, it says, if I
Had.
if I had been, sorry, if I had born, vamos a borrarlo esto. If I had born 100 years ago, my life would have been different, right? Would have been different. I probably
Wouldn't.
okay, wouldn't go to college, wouldn't gone to college. I
Will have.
again, please. I had or I would have stayed.
Would have.
I would have stayed at home and taken care of my children. If I
Had.
had, if I had had the luck to be born into a rich family, I would have had mates and other people to take care of me. If I
Had.
had come from a poor background,
Would.
I would have been a maid myself. Very good. So remember, we have the results, todos los resultados. Vamos a ver acá. This is a result, right? This is another result. And this is another result. Ok, esos son los tres resultados de la primera condición. Dice, if I had born 100 years ago, estos serían los resultados que yo tendría de esa condición, ¿cierto? Luego que tenemos otra condición, if I had had the luck to be born into a rich family, y aquí tenemos otro resultado. I would have had mates and other people to take care of me. Y aquí tenemos otra condición, if I had come from a poor background, y un resultado. I would have been made myself. ¿Okay? Entonces, siempre cuando tengamos una condición, debemos tener resultados de esta condición. ¿Qué pasaría si esta condición pasara? ¿Ok? Entonces, como pueden ver acá, tenemos tres resultados de la primera, uno de la segunda y uno de la tercera condición. ¿Ok? So, let's go back to the page 129. Okay? Here you have another sentence, another exercise. It says, put the words in italic in the correct order. Check your answer in reading 2A. For example, Here we have I think, y aquí tenemos las palabras que tenemos que ordenar. So how can you order these sentences? What do you think? How can we order this? Any ideas? How can you order? ¿Qué palabra?
Can
I
you-
think he'd been alive today.
Ok, vamos a ordenarla.
He,
I think. ¿Cómo?
he'd been alive today.
Creo que se está olvidando de una palabra. Muy importante.
If
If, right? Se
Okay.
está olvidando de if. Ok, entonces diríamos, I think if
He'd
he had been alive today.
been alive today. Ok, y aquí tenemos la segunda parte que debemos ordenar. Appreciated, have, would, he. ¿Cómo podríamos ordenar?
He would have appreciated.
Very good. Let's complete here. He would have appreciated. He would have appreciated the way Google and the internet have made it so easy to find and to share images across the world, right? Very good. It says, look at the sentences in exercise 3A and the answer, and answer the questions. Number 1, it says, what does the stand for in exercise 1? Okay, what does the stand for in exercise 1?
Had.
Had. In this situation, it means had, right? It's the contraction of had. And what about the exercise 2? Bueno, aquí le puse la forma completa, ¿no? Era lo mismo, la contracción. El ejercicio número 2 es would, right? What about number 2? It says, which verb phrase, 1 or 2, describe the imaginary reaction or result, and which of them describe the imaginary situation?
The first describes an imaginary situation. Meanwhile, the second describes the imaginary reaction or result.
Very good. This one describes the imaginary situation, right? The if clause describes the imaginary situation. And this one describes the imaginary reaction or result, right? Very good. Okay. Here we have exercise number 5. Complete the sentences using the past perfect or would have plus the past participle. Okay? Number 1, what can we say here? If I
Had gone.
had gone to bed earlier last night, I
Wouldn't
wouldn't
have been. Had been.
have been so tired this morning. Very good. Let's go with another person. Let's go with Sebastian. Number 2, please. How can you complete number 2? If I
If I wouldn't be so tired this morning, I would. I
Ok.
would.
Quiero que se fijen en el ejemplo que hizo su compañera. Aquí en la número 1. Pueden mirar mi pantalla. Ok. Quiero que siga el mismo ejemplo, pero con su oración. If I. ¿Qué utilizó su compañera acá, Sebastián? ¿Qué tiempo gramatical es este?
Past participle.
Past perfect. Ok, recuerde que el past perfect lo ocupamos, lo armamos, lo formamos con had y un verbo en past participle. En su oración, ¿cuál sería? En la número 2. ¿Cómo?
If I had been so tired this morning,
¿Y el not? ¿Dónde lo
would-
pondría?
if I hadn't
Very good. If I
been
hadn't
so tired
been so tired, very good. I
this morning, I would get.
I would
I would get.
look at this example. Look at the example here.
I would have gotten.
Gotten. I would have gotten. Recuerde que siempre en la segunda parte de la oración utilizamos would have y un verbo en past participle. ¿Ok? Así como lo tiene acá. Fíjense acá, would have y un verbo en past participle. Y en la primera parte utilizamos el past perfect. ¿Cómo armamos el past perfect? Con had más past participle. ¿Ok? De esta forma armamos el past perfect. Formamos el past perfect. Let's go with Samara, please. Number 3.
If I hadn't get, sería teacher.
Verb is the past participle. What is the past participle of get, Samara?
Gotten.
Gotten.
If I hadn't gotten a plate, I wouldn't have
Past participle. What is the past participle of miss?
I didn't
Missed.
okay.
I wouldn't have missed. Okay. Let's go with Rafael. Number 4, please.
If I hadn't missed the bus, I would have gotten. I would have gotten here on time.
Very good. Let's go with Maria Celeste. Number 5, please.
If I had gotten here on time, you wouldn't have been so angry with me.
Very good. You wouldn't have been so angry with me. Good. Very good. I want you to tell me if you have questions about this. Algo que todavía no entiendan. Any questions?
Teacher, I don't understand. I didn't understand. I use the, for example, if he'd live longer, is the same if he if he had lived longer.
If he lived longer, if
Yes,
he had lived
lived
longer,
longer.
is the same.
Is the same?
Yes, because this is a contraction of the verb of the auxiliary verb had. Okay?
Is for had, not for would.
No, not for would. This is something that I told you before that you have to be very careful. So we realize that this is had because of the next word. The next word here is a verb in the past participle, right? That's why we notice, we can realize that is had. But when we use would, remember after would, the verb is always in the base form. Okay? This is something different. Okay? Si usted hace la contracción de would, siempre va a tener un verbo en su forma base. For example, I or he live. Él viviría. Siempre el verbo va en la forma base. ¿Ok? En cambio acá tiene que ir en pasado participio si esto es had. ¿Ok? No sé si me
Yes, teacher. I
Okay.
understand.
Good. Any other questions?
Teacher, ¿podemos tener otro ejemplo que no sea con estos verbos de get, miss? Solo he visto con get y con not miss.
Okay, yes, of course. Let's practice this a little bit